Momentje, Ellen.
Mhm.
Verkeerde. Zien jullie nu de presentatie vanaf het begin?
Ja.
Super. Fire away.
Good. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I will do this in English because I think we have somebody from other places than the Netherlands, and I think it's also good to have this for recording purposes. So maybe good to share with you upfront that we are recording this, so that you are aware. And if you have any issues with that, please let us know. Yeah, welcome. My name is, I think that's the next slide. Yeah. My name is Ellen Brouwer. I'm the Certification Program Manager, and I will be presenting today together with Anne-Wil Broersma. Anne-Wil, maybe it's nice if you introduce yourselves, right?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Anne-Wil Broersma. I'm the Standards Assurance and Verification Manager. So work directly with Ellen in the certification team at Climate Neutral Group.
Nice, thanks. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, today's agenda. So first a short introduction. Then I will speak a little bit about the spirit of the certification program. We'll elaborate a little bit more on some of the details of the standard and some of the requirements. Then Anne-Wil will take over and she will talk about the assurance protocol and the trademarks and claims policy, and we'll also give you some tips and suggestions for how you could move on if you decide to become certified against our standard. Maybe it's nice to mention as well that I see some of our colleagues here in the room. So I guess some of the carbon advisors are also joining, so that's really nice. So also warm welcome to our dear colleagues. There will be a Q&A moment after each agenda item and also at the end of the presentation. So really, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, raise your hand, it's fine. You can really interrupt us, it's okay. Maybe we do have to manage time a little bit, so we can also say, okay, now we have to really go a little bit towards the end of some rounds of questions. But yeah, I think it will be possible to address your questions. If breaks are needed for whatever reason, also let us know and we'll facilitate. Okay, next slide, please. First, a little bit more in general about the Climate Neutral Group. Our mission, our drive is really to help organizations on their A to zero CO2 journey and to really realize a net zero carbon economy, net zero carbon society in 2050 according to the Paris Agreement. So that's really what we're trying to achieve. We were founded in 2002. And in 2022, which is last year, we merged with the Anthesis Group. And so that gave us a whole scale of opportunities. Anthesis is an international consultancy firm operating in more than 23 countries with a lot of sustainability experts. So yeah, that gave us a lot of opportunity to really upscale. We have in total supported more than 3,500 organizations, compensated over 20 million tons of CO2. And by doing so, we have really been able to contribute to the lives of millions of individuals. Some recognized partnerships. We are an ICIL endorsed community member. We are a founding partner as well of ICROA, have been there involved since the very early beginnings, and we are B Corp certified. Okay. The next one. So this A to zero CO2 approach, what does it entail? Really what we are doing is we are dividing our services over 4 pillars. The first is footprinting. So we really help organizations to get insight into their carbon footprint. And that can be a carbon footprint of an organization, of a service, sometimes also comparisons or benchmarks that we're doing. And of course, LCA calculations or product footprint calculations. Then we have a whole consultancy department that's really geared towards helping organizations to reduce their emissions. So a lot of expertise is in that team to help you to find the right reduction measures. Then we have a whole offsetting team a team of experts that will provide offsets that suit your nature of your business to be able to neutralize the remaining emissions that you have. And then we have the certification program to become climate neutral certified. And that can be done for either your organization, a range of products, or just one product, and a range of services. And it can also be a combination of those all. And in the certification program, basically all the other three pillars are also interwoven. So it's really, what we consider the cherry on the cake, maybe. And there you can see also our logo. Okay, next slide, please. So a little bit more about footprinting as one of the services that we're providing. We work with a lot of different tools, but we also make customized tools to develop your footprint and to calculate your footprint. And as I was saying, that can be a footprint at product level, service level, organization level, and really depending on the needs that you have. Next slide, please. As I was saying, this is a bit about our reduction strategy. We help you to define your baseline, and so you can really implement a range of actions to systematically reduce your footprint. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going very fast. This is all the introduction. And then the offsetting services that we're providing to deliver the most credible credits. And this is really in the last few months, I would say, this is really been in the news quite a bit. So I'm very proud to say that we are really offering the most eligible, high quality credits that are also approved by ICROA, and we're working really with the best schemes to really make sure that you will be provided with the best quality offsets. Okay. So having said a little bit about CNG, now I would like to say a little bit more about the spirit of the certification program. So the next slide, please. So what is the program really about? The program is developed in such a way that you can really little by little reduce your emissions following certain annual reduction targets. So depending on what you want to get certified, if that's your organization, a product, or multiple products or services, you have to reduce your emissions, and that's spread over an X amount of years. Having said that, for organizations, you need to bring your emissions down to 0% by 2050. And if you want to get a product or service certified, you have to reduce your emissions with 25% by 2030. That target is, as I was saying, that target is translated into a so-called annual reduction target that I will explain in a little bit. And that is, of course, a critical element of being compliant with our program. And these targets are really in line with the Paris Agreement that prescribes that we need to reach this stated by 2050 of net zero society. So we really focus a lot on internal reductions. And if you are meeting the requirements of our standard and are neutralizing with offsetting all your remaining emissions, those emissions that cannot be reduced yet, you can make the claim to be climate neutral. So people like to say they are on track with Paris. Next slide, please. The program is composed of 3 core program documents. That's the climate neutral standard, the assurance protocol, and the trademarks and claims policy. And the standard contains really the requirements, so the criteria that you need to be compliant with in order to claim climate neutrality. So that's the set of requirements. The assurance protocol is basically a document that describes the official processes and procedures around becoming audited around the audit and becoming certified. So basically all the rules of the game. And then the trademarks and claims policy elaborates on the permitted claims that you're allowed to make in case you're compliant, and also the rules and regulation around that. The standard was formally launched in 2021 with a transition period because we did have another previous version of the standard. And we did a complete review of the assurance protocol and the trademarks and claims policy in 2022, and those were released approximately a year ago, almost a year ago. We have a website where everything can be found, the Climate Neutral Certification website, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So I think I've said a lot already here. Our trademark, which you can see at the right, that's the climate neutral certified trademark, or the logo as some people like to call it, is currently registered in the Benelux, in the EU and in the US. So formally registered. The trademark is present in about 21 countries, over 30 million products. I think this may be even a little bit outdated, but a lot of products. And approximately 60 companies, even also a little bit more, make use of this. What we lately see is that especially in the agri-food domain, we're really upscaling quite fast. So we have a lot of coffee, tea, dairy, fruits, flowers, rice, etc. A lot of food commodities being certified, but that's not exclusive. We also operate in the non-food domains. So basically, at the moment, the trademark can be deployed for any type of organization or product or service. We are the first climate neutral certification program that is making use of the ICO codes of good practice as guidelines. I will explain a little bit more about that in a sec, how that process was taking place. And the clients that we're typically looking for, I mean, we would of course like to serve everybody, but what we really are looking for is those that are really front runners, that are really truly committed to actual reduction in their, in their supply chain or in their value chain. Because we realize that our program is not easy. I mean, it's really not easy to reduce your emissions so substantially. And so we want our clients to be really proud of their achievements and to really be committed to what they are doing. Go ahead, next slide, please. So a little bit more about the standard. If you are, I'm just thinking, Annabelle, is there this slide with the two visuals where we are showing the two reduction lines? Maybe it would be nice just to share that one.
Sure. Give me a sec.
Because I'd like to use these slides because it really gives a good visual of what the program really is all about. And now I'm putting you on a lot of pressure. Huh? Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Thanks.
Do you see?
We see your
I'm
Teams
working
environment.
Okay, I'm working with two screens, so it's a bit.
Yeah. This is the slide that I wanted to share. That's nice. Maybe because now we see your presenter mode.
Oh. And a second ago you did not, so it's.
So under weergave instellingen. Yeah, great. This is fine. This will do.
Okay.
Just leave it like that. This will do. Yeah.
Sure.
So here you see basically the distinction between being certified for your organization or being certified for your product or service. So on the left, you see the visual for organization, on the right for products or services. As I was saying, if you want to become certified for your organization, you need to reduce your emissions to an absolute zero in 2050 or to zero. If that will really be zero, that is to be questioned. But at the moment, we're putting in zero because we really are convinced that you need to reduce as fast as you can, whether or not in 5 years from now, we are going to revise that to maybe a reduction of 90%, 95%. That's to be debated. But the objective of our program is really go down as fast as you can. If in your country, there is national law or national regulation that prescribes an interim target for 2030, and there's a lot of countries that have that, then also that interim target needs to be adhered to. And you can see that in the green dot, for instance, in the visual on the left, where you see 51. This is applicable at the moment in the Netherlands. At the moment, there is a reduction, an interim reduction imposed of 49% compared to your baseline. And given the Green Deal and all the regulation around that, and also the adoption process of that regulation in the Netherlands, which is currently taking place, most likely the interim target will change to 55% by 2030. So this will be a change in the content of our standard. So what you can see, assuming your baseline is 2020, 100%, your emissions are 100% at that time, that's your reference point. Year after year, you have to reduce. And you can see the time frame between 2020 and 2030 is just 10 years. And the actual reduction you need to achieve in that period is a lot. The line is very steep. And after 2030, the line is a little bit less steep, which means that the reductions are a little bit more spread out. The reason for this is because it is really the decisive moment right now. This decade is when everything needs to happen if we really want to mitigate climate change. So the worst effects from climate change need to be reverted between now and 2030 if we really want to stay under 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius. So that's an important consideration. If you are certified for your organization, the emission sources that you need to include, so this is prescribed in the standard, are all your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So those are the emissions that you have influence on yourself, plus all the what we call non-product attributable scope 3 emissions. And those are sort of like considered overhead emissions, emissions that even belong according to the GHG protocol in scope 3, but on which we think that you have a lot of influence. And examples of these are, for instance, business flying, commuting, transport of your employees, that kind of stuff. So on those, we think that you have a lot of influence, and therefore they're part of your certification of your organization. On the other hand, if you want to get your organization, your product or your service certified, here we want to include in the inventory of your GHG emissions, we want you to include all your emissions resulting from the entire supply chain of your product. So all the emissions that are created because of the manufacturing, production, processing, delivering, use of your product or service that you're selling. So actually, this is sort of complementary to the other ones. I mean, these are all the emissions, scope 3 emissions. These are mainly scope 3 emissions that are really directly attributable to the products that you're producing or delivering, or the services that you're producing or delivering. And the target is completely different here. You are supposed to reduce your emissions, as I was saying earlier, with 25% by 2030. We have not prescribed any targets for that any time afterwards. But in a revision of the standard that's going to happen this year, most likely there will be another target imposed there for the remaining between 2030 and 2050. And then you can see in both graphs or both visuals that all the emissions that are not reduced yet, so that's the black dotted lines going down, those need to be offset. So those need to be neutralized with credible offsets year after year. And then maybe in this presentation that you're having, the next slide about the reality, real life, before we go back to the original presentation. Now you can imagine that this is all very theoretical. In real life, things fluctuate, you know, it's never so linear as we're suggesting here in the visuals that I was just presenting. So what is important here is to realize that there's always the possibility, and that's scenario 2, to have an earlier baseline. And that earlier baseline is,
I think the connection of Ellen broke up for a second, but I assume she'll be back.
I got disconnected, but I'm back.
Hi, Ellen.
I think it's still recording. Yeah, good. Sorry about that. I got disconnected. I think Teams got disconnected. So the earlier baseline I was talking about the earlier baseline. So the reality could be that you've already implemented a lot of reduction measures in the past before the baseline that you've defined. If that's the case, you are allowed on our program to define an earlier baseline, meaning that you can also include in your reduction targets and in your calculations of already achieved reductions, you can also use those and count for those. In scenario 3, what can happen is that you are reducing faster than is prescribed in the standard. If that's the case, you can eventually, under certain conditions, be rewarded as a quote good performer, which means that you are eligible for exams of audits. So that means that you're consistently going faster than what is required by the standard. Could also be the case that you are unfortunately going a little bit slower than what is prescribed by the standard. We allow for a 3-year flexibility rule, which means that you can be under the curve or under the line, the blue line, for 3 years in a row. But after 3 years, you need to be back on track, on your line again. If you are not able to achieve that consistently for a period longer than 3 years, then you will be qualified as a poor performer, and that can really lead to decertification. So that's really important to take into account. But there can also be scenarios, like scenario 5 is visualizing here. There can also be reasons to ask for justifiable delay, because we are also realizing very much that, yes, maybe some reductions require a lot of investment, or some new technology needs to become available, or you need more time to redesign your processes in your organization, or there can be any kind of reason. If you can provide to us a solid justification, a good plan of action, let's say, and also making it clear to us how you're intending to reserve budget for it, and you can provide really a solid case, then we can give you an exempt, so that you are back on track a little bit later beyond the 3 years flexibility rule. Okay, I just wanted to highlight that. Maybe we can go back to the original presentation.
Yeah.
Are there any questions about what I was just presenting? It's really about the spirit of the program. I will now go into the topic of discussing a little bit more in detail the standard.
Sorry, didn't want to share the right screen.
Yeah.
Now we're back to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
There we go.
So we'll talk a little bit more about the actual content of the standard. It's good to realize that the standard is composed of some core and general criteria. And core criteria are really the most fundamental criteria. If you're not compliant with the core criteria, the chance that you are getting a major non-conformity is very high. Major non-conformity means, yeah, we will explain that in a sec, but a major non-conformity means, okay, this is a serious issue, and the certification body that's doing the audit will really channel this as a major problem that needs to be resolved. Otherwise, you can't get certified. An example of a major non-conformity is that you need to be on track, that you need to reduce sufficiently, for instance. Anyway, the standard is composed in such a way that you can see the criteria that are applicable to certification of an organization, product, or service. If they're repeating, if they're very similar, then you will see idem, blah, blah, blah. So there's also a lot of audit tips in it, so that you know how you are going to be judged in terms of compliance, and what the auditor is going to look for, and what kind of evidence they will look for. And there's also some criteria that are applicable only from year 2 or year 3 onwards. That means in your first year of certification, they don't apply to you yet. Then a little bit about the high-level structure of the standard. The first chapter is composed of all sorts of rules about a quality management system. So we believe that in order to be able to reduce your emissions, that you need to have a systematic approach to that. And a systematic approach means also that you understand really well what you're doing, what you're not doing yet, where you have opportunities, where you see points of improvement, and how you keep track of all of that, and how you sort of become a learning organization. So in order to do that, it's very important in our view that you have a quality management system composed of clear document management system where you can really file, your evidence, your documents that show that you're compliant. Really like a systematic system to making sure that everything is properly filed. But also a quality management system entails a monitoring and evaluation approach to the things that you're doing, so that you really have this idea of, okay, we are always reviewing where we are, seeing what is going wrong, seeing what is going well, learning from that, implementing new actions, implementing corrections, recap if those were effective, and then move on to see if those implemented corrections and corrective actions actually contributed to where you want to be. So to really become a learning organization, as I was just saying. So for that, we really want you to have a monitoring and an evaluation system in place. So that's chapter 1. There's some other requirements, but goes beyond this presentation maybe. Then chapter 2 is all about defining the boundaries of your footprint and also the boundaries of your certification, really. So you are expected to really define for yourself which emission sources you are going to include and which ones you're going to exclude, and what is the justification for that. And you're also going to define really for yourself, do I want to get certified for product, organization, maybe both? How does it work? How can I work towards, gradually scaling this up in the future, to really think about what is the starting point and what is the ending point of my certification, really. Then once you know about which emission sources to include, you're going to actually quantify the emissions so that you can really calculate your actual footprint. And once you have that sharp, and once you know your total emissions, then you can define your baseline. Then you can define as well, what is my starting point? What is my reference point against which I'm going to measure myself in the future? So I know this is my footprint today, knowing that I need to reduce it every year a little bit more. Where do I need to be in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And that's really in chapter 4, what is described as the developing a reduction plan. So you're going to think about all sorts of measures that you can implement in your organization or across your supply chain, depending on what is being certified. And you're going to really think about, okay, how can I reduce my total footprint year after year? And how much should I reduce? And you're going to quantify these reduction measures. So if I have this idea in mind that I'm going to change my, let's say my fleet, my vehicles, I'm going from trucks that are running on gasoline, I'm going to electrify them, then you can make a plan for yourself. This year, I'm going to change maybe, let's say, 3 trucks. Next year, 5 trucks. The year after, 10 trucks. This is going to be the investment. This is what it's going to cost me, and this is what it's going to reward me. This is the actual reduction that I will save, or the actual GHG emissions that I will save by implementing this plan. And this reduction plan will really help you to make this long-term vision about what can I do and what do I need to do, and will I do enough? And you're going to evaluate your progress on this year after year to really see if you are on track with what you were planning on doing. So during an audit, the auditor will look at, did you do enough in the past? Did your actual footprint meet the expectations? Was it reduced enough, really? And the auditor is going to look, is your plan for the future enough? Is it credible enough? Is it feasible? Are your reduction measures that you anticipate on implementing in the future, are they going to be enough to meet your reduction targets in the future? So during the audit, the auditor looks backwards and they look forward. And then the last chapter of the standard is about public reporting and claims making. One of the things, of course, is once you're certified and once you are compliant with the standard, how are you going to report about your achievements and which claims are you going to make? So this is really in a nutshell what the standard is about. Then there's a bunch of annexes that will help you to implement sort of the standard, and they give a lot of rules about how to define your footprint, how to set up your footprint. I will explain some of these more in detail. We also have a lot of guidance documents that Anne will explain in a sec. But yeah, maybe we can just move on a little bit. I was talking about this already. Oh.
Sorry, wanted to ask if you wanted to skip this one, but
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
So this is like a little bit this continuous improvement cycle that I was talking about. That's the whole vision of the standard. We really understand that you're starting at a certain level and it's not perfect, but year after year, you're going to review, you're going to see, did I do enough? What can I do? How can I improve? Should I implement more measures? Did my measures actually achieve the results that I was anticipating on? And so this becomes really a cycle of continuous reflection and what we call the continuous improvement cycle. So this is really a fundamental basis of the program. Yeah. Through these slides, I really want to go very fast, but I just want to show to you that we have this available. We have a summary of the requirements of the standard for every single chapter. I just discussed very high level what each chapter is about, and I can really imagine that the standard is quite overwhelming when you see it for the first time. It's like really a big book, right? Right. So just be aware that we have a summary per chapter, and we also have a lot of supporting material and guidance documents on our website that really help you to get focused on what you want to learn about the standard. All right, so we can just go very quickly to all these different, let's say, highlights. Also, if you are becoming certified or if you intend to become certified for products, I just want to say that I would really advise you to go through some slides that we have also on our website available about some additional clarification around product certification. Product certification can become quite complex because sometimes we have clients that have maybe sometimes 100 or 200 or maybe even 1,000 products certified. So how can you make this effective and efficient? So we have a lot of ideas about how you can cluster certain product groups under certain what we call segments. So you can cluster a bunch of similar products with similar emission patterns in one cluster, what we call a segment, and then you can have an average footprint and an average reduction plan, because otherwise it would be undoable if you would have to calculate a footprint for every single product. So we have a lot of ideas about that, and some of that is already available on our website, and some is also in the make, which can be shared by the carbon advisors with you. And consultants can support you in. Yeah. And maybe what I want to say about product certification, what is good to remember is the footprint of an organization is always well, most of the time, but I would always say almost always an absolute footprint. So it's the total aggregated emissions, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 non-product attributable. When we're talking about the footprint of a product, we make it relative. And the reason for that is because if we make it absolute, the amount of sales can also have a lot of influence. Because you can imagine that one year you're selling your product maybe 10 times and the next year 100 times, and then it would mean that you would actually not have a reduction, but you would have an increase of your emissions. So what we are doing is we're making your footprint relative in terms of, and we are expressing your footprint in terms of kilogram product, unit product, or something like that. So you can really see that the actual reductions achieved are really happening. Okay, very quickly. Gosh, I can say so much, but yeah. Annex 1 of the standard talks about which emission sources you are required to include in your inventory. When I talk about inventory, it's really your short list of all your emission sources. So that's good. It's really specific terminology prescribed by the GHG protocol. But yeah, the inventory is basically the short list of all your emission sources. And we are prescriptive in which ones need to be included and which ones are optional and or can be excluded. Then we have Annex 2.
Yes, sorry. You go.
Yeah. Annex 2 is our sector benchmark tool. It has just been revised some time ago. The whole idea of the sector benchmark tool is that more and more we see that clients operating in the same domain are certified. So we, for instance, we have a lot of banana clients, we have a lot of coffee clients, and we want to create some sort of consistency between, especially how similar clients are being treated. You know, it would be very unfair if the footprint would be completely different from each other, or if we would apply different rules or regulations. So, in order to standardize practices, we have sort of developed a sector benchmark tool so that there are specific rules for certain commodities or certain domains, let's say. But this also gives the opportunity, and that's also one of the rules of the standard. It can be the case that at sector level, we decide that a certain target or certain regulation is not applicable or not achievable or not feasible. And so as a sector, we may decide that things can be different. So there's really a rule in the standard that says that through a sector benchmark process, we can override rules of the standard. But that needs to be in consensus, and that needs to be endorsed as well by our advisory committee. The thing is, what we see is we actually finalized today the coffee expedition. So that's an expedition of a lot of coffee clients that are really getting together to really learn from each other. So through the sector benchmark, we also facilitate that partners or similar partners can come together to really exchange ideas how they can reduce. So that's the whole vision about the sector benchmark tool. Okay, next slide. Then there's Annex 3A and 3B, and Annex 3A and 3B are prescribing which data sources, and that's either secondary data sources like databases with emission information or emission factors can be used, as well as which calculation methods can be used. So there's a lot of what we see as good common practice in this whole GHG inventory, GHG calculations. And so we are adopting a lot of this good practice as well in our certification program. And so Annex 3A and 3B describe sort of what the good practice databases and calculation methods are. Yeah. Then I will be very short about this, but there's getting your product certified, and meaning that you need to take into account all the emissions from your supply chain and from your supply chain actors in your inventory can be a complex and tedious process. So we do have some additional rules to offer flexibility for the certification of products. I invite you to just read them because it will take too much time to really explain them in detail. But if you have questions about it, you can contact your carbon advisor. But just to know, for you to know that there's some flexibility around how to calculate your emissions and how to reduce your emissions. Okay. Annex 5 is about insetting. So when we developed this standard some time ago, insetting was just gaining momentum, I would say. And since the last few years, insetting is really considered more and more as a very good initiative, I would say, or a very good practice in order to be able to reduce your emissions in your supply chain. And in CNG, we are now developing a new standard, and really a specified standard about insetting and about the rules that we think are needed in order to regulate insetting. That give also a lot of flexibility and freedom to develop insetting projects. So we are really one of the front runners in this, and to really define this. Yeah. And then Annex 6 is providing tools how you can actually calculate your targets and calculate the effectiveness of your anticipated reduction measures. And this is actually a very first version. we are now releasing version 4 of the reduction calculation tool, about to release it. So we have really been improving this tool, I would say. And this tool is freely available to our clients so that they can really, so that they have really a nice tool to actually calculate their reductions and to see how effective they will be. Yeah. And also a tool that we provide is the assessment tool. And this is sort of like an internal checklist that you can, or checklist that you could use for internal use to really see and to determine for yourself whether or not you think you're compliant and ready for the audit. Yeah.
Thanks, Ellen.
That's
your
it,
last
right?
slide. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe
Thanks sorry for the disconnection. Sorry for that.
that happens.
Yeah.
That happens. Maybe before we dive into the assurance protocol and the process around the audits, maybe there are some questions. I can only see Ellen, so please speak up if there's any.
I see no raising hands.
Okay. Okay, then we just continue. Yeah, so I will say something.
There is a question in the chat, eh?
Oh, perfect.
Where can I access the standard and the guidance documents?
On our certification website, and at the end of my presentation, I will also show you quickly on our website. And I'll make sure that everyone who attends this webinar will get the presentation, and then you also receive the link to our website and all the other information. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Thanks for the answers already in the chat. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've limited visibility of the things going on, but thanks.
I will follow the chat. No problem.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Yeah, just speak up if if there are relevant questions. So the assurance protocol, as Ellen already explained, really guides you through the whole certification process. I will have 2 slides now that give a very high-level overview of what the audit and certification process looks like for first-year clients, and for second and other year clients, it's roughly the same. But what's not the same is that it starts with clients understanding their own ambitions and really trying to figure out if the ambitions of the client match with what is required from you under the certification program. And that are all the requirements. Sorry, one moment. So that are all the requirements under the standard assurance protocol and the trademarks and claim policy. Because when you do decide to start the certification process, you are required to meet all the requirements in the standards, and it's important to realize that and to see if the vision of you and the company also align with that. But if they do, we CNG and the client, we sign a certification contract, and that contract is also necessary for you to be able to contract a certification body, because they always check with us if there's a contract between you and CNG. In that contract, also other things can be specified. For example, if you would like to have consultancy support, or if you would like to purchase offsets, you are not required to do so. And the only thing that you are required to do for the certification program is to pay for the program fee. And all the other things are, you can negotiate with your carbon advisor, you can agree to that, but it's not necessary. Once that contract is signed, you can already start contacting a certification body. We work with 2. We work with Preferred by Nature, and we work with EcoCert. And you can already ask for an audit fee very, very early in the certification process. Let's see, under 3, that's really where for you the work starts internally. It's really this stage is to get ready for the audit. Ellen explained the requirements of the standards, the implementation of a management system, calculating your baseline footprint, defining and calculating reductions, things like that. That is really under 3. You get ready, and you can get consultancy support from CNG if necessary, but all the documentation, all the guidance documents is online. So we've written the program in such a way that you should be able to get audit ready without support. But so you can choose in that sense. Under the 4th step, we ask for you to send in your labels, we call them. So if you go for product certification, you'll probably have some wrapping or other form of labeling on which the logo will be shown, and we ask you to send it to us to approve it. And also all the other communication that you do on your website, we ask to approve, because we see that sometimes little mistakes are made with regards to communication. For example, we always like you to say climate neutral certified instead of climate neutral. We check these little things, and it's also really to prevent you from scrutiny from outside. So we have quite some experience with this, and it's also a requirement under the standard to have this checked by our communications department. Under step 5, you assess either yourselves or you can hire a consultant if you are compliant with all the requirements set out in the standard. Basically, are you audit ready? In the meantime, I hope you have selected the certification body, and you are appointed an auditor. You've been in contact with him or her, and if you deem ready, then you can submit all your documentation to your auditor. And we have a very hard deadline in the assurance protocol, and it's 2 weeks in advance. And this is really necessary also for the auditor to become ready for the audit, to really read all your documentation. They also need to dive into your footprint and really understand your company and what your footprint and what your reductions are all about. If you fail to meet that 2-week deadline, then we can the CB can decide to move the audit, as they don't have enough time to prepare. There we go. So this second slide starts with number 7. That's when the audit happens. Most of the time, from experience, I know that both the auditors from Preferred by Nature and Ecocerta really like to go on site, so they would visit you in your factory or in your office. Sometimes under the standards also required to do an on-site visit. For example, always the first audit with a new client is always on site, so prepare for that. It lasts a day or a day or 2, and you will go over all the requirements of the standard. And I have some slides a little bit further on to elaborate a bit more on that. But after a day or 2, the audit is over, and probably there are some things that are not yet in line with the requirements from the program, from the standard, I mean. So under 8, the auditor at the end of the audit will tell you if there are non-conformities, things that are not yet correct, should be corrected, or things that should be developed. and you also agree together with the auditor what the deadlines are for the non-conformity resolution, is what we call it. Usually that's a time frame of, let's say, 3 months. So within the 3 months, you have time to change things, to adjust things, send the auditor new evidence. And then under 9, the auditor reviews the new evidence and see if you are compliant with the standard. If the auditor deems your evidence satisfactory, they will send the report and all the evidence after they've written the report to the second reviewer. This is the 4I principle. This really means that within the certification body, always another auditor will have a look at your audit and at your evidence. Hopefully the second reviewer agrees with the recommendation of a positive certification decision from the auditor. Otherwise, he or she wouldn't have sent it to the second reviewer. And a positive certification decision is issued, and you will receive your first certificates. From that moment, under 11, you are entitled to make claims. So either on an organization level, on a product level, or about your service. And you can communicate that on PAC, on your website, however you want. And from that moment, you're also obliged to pay offsets and program fee. And that will be handled by C&G based on the results from the auditor. Or I have to say, I would like to add that if you purchase offsets from another broker, then we're not involved in that. Then we only settle the program fee for the products that you've sold or the services that you delivered. This is again a slide, summary of the certification process. So I won't go over that now because I already did, but for you to have another look at that for preparing. And with this slide, I would like to highlight that the time frame for the whole certification process can really differ per client, and it really is influenced by how complex your organization is, how complex your footprint is, how busy the CB is, what kind of non-conformities there were issued by the auditor during the audit process. So the whole process can take between 3 to 12 months. So I know that's for you, that's quite maybe a bit vague, but this is reality. We would really advise you to request an audit quote as soon as possible, and also set an audit date as soon as possible. Then you have time to choose, and then you have a little bit of flexibility. So also once you are certified for the first time, then please, after 5-6 months that you've received your first positive certification decision, already half a year later, start thinking about planning your next audit, so you know that you're in time before the end of the first certificates. We at C&G also offer consultancy services, and it really depends on also the knowledge of the people within your organization that are involved. Depends on what kind of service you can hire C&G for. From experience, I know that a lot of clients find it very helpful if they receive help, especially the first time, with calculating their footprint. And often when clients have been helped for that the first time, then the second time maybe they can do it themselves because the process stays the same, only the numbers change. But we can also help you with setting up a reduction strategy. So really help you think what kind of measures can we implement in our organization that are effective, and also to calculate actually, okay, what are the effects of those reductions on my footprint? Is this measure that I thought of, for example, installing LED light in my company, how much effect does that really have on my footprint? Or is it maybe better to think about another type of reduction measure that maybe has is more effective? And C&G also offers a pre-assessment, and this is really a systematic review. When you have, for all the 5 chapters that Ellen described earlier, if you already have evidence for all the 5 chapters, you have your footprint, you have your reduction plan, you think you have a good climate policy, then our consultants will check if they think that you are audit ready, is what we call it. You can combine different supporting services. You can pick one, you can pick none, but know that we offer different services. And what I also see is that needs from clients, they change also throughout the year. Like I said, once the footprinting skills are developed within the organization, maybe the focus changes to reduction strategies also on the long term. Yes, as I've already said briefly, we currently work with 2 CBs, and that might change in the future, but for now it's Preferred by Nature and EcoCert. You are allowed to ask for a quote for both. I would also what's the word? Ik zou je aanraden, I would advise you to ask for an audit quote from both. It's quite an easy process. Throughout our website, you can ask for a quote, and you can also select the certification body that best meets your needs. And if you and the certification body agree on a audit date, audit fee, other contract conditions that the CB might require you to sign, then you can sign an audit contract, and you can plan your first audit. It's good to know that we are not involved in this whole in this formation process. Always feel free, if you have questions, to contact your carbon advisor, but generally we don't have insights in the fees that are asked or other details. But in this slide, this is a print screen from the assurance protocol. You can see roughly what we envision, the amount of days, or what are ideas of how much time a certain audit should take, depending on the size of your organization. So if you think something's weird going on with a quote, always feel free to reach out to us, and probably we can solve this. If you have signed a contract with your CB, then we had that hard deadline of 2 weeks in advance. And this is a short overview of all the things that you are required to share with your auditor in advance. Sometimes they can ask questions via the mail if you can elaborate a little bit on something, or in case you've missed a certain annex or a certain document. This is an overview, and this is also written out in the assurance protocol. This slide informs you a little bit of what the audit itself looks like. So roughly speaking, there are 3 main parts of an audit. It's an opening meeting. At the beginning of an audit, you have the compliance verification. That's the part of the audit that takes most work, that requires most work. And you always close off. During the opening meeting, everyone introduces each other or themselves, and they double check and they confirm the certification scope, so everyone knows, okay, this is the scope what we're talking about today. This is what we're going to certify, this product or this range of products or this organization. And the management commitment is checked during the opening meeting, and management must be present for that. And then the biggest chunk of the audit takes place. It's a compliance verification, and it's basically the auditor checking all your data, all your evidence, checking them against all the requirements from the standard, all the 5 chapters. And usually this is done on a sample basis, because they can't check every invoice, they can't check every number, so they will pick and choose the numbers or the types of evidences that they think is most worthwhile checking. For example, because they are the most prone to risk, most prone to error, or because they are really for example, because it's an really high emission source for your company. So it's really important to check that parameter. An auditor will also ask a lot of questions during the audit, obviously, about your footprint, about your reductions, but also really trying to understand what your reasoning is when setting up the footprint. How does your company work? And what were your assumptions? What was your reasoning when setting up a footprint, and how do the reduction also fit within your organization? During the closing meeting, the auditor shares their observation at a very high level, and they will also, and that's I think one of the most important parts of the closing meetings, they will really go over the non-conformities. So they will tell you which non-conformities they will write up, and together you will agree on a time frame for correcting those. Usually within 3 months, you are required to send in new evidence or send in new calculations. This is a slide that gives you an idea of the different things, the different types of evidence that an auditor is looking for. So it's not only numbers in Excel, it can also be photos, it can be print screens of invoices, it can be interviews with colleagues, copies of documents and records. And as Ellen also was saying, please make sure that you really document all these types of evidence carefully, also for the years to come. This is a slide on sampling, but I already said something about it, and for time's sake, I will go over it. We've mentioned already major and minor nonconformities, and for example, a major nonconformity with regards to, let's say, a minor nonconformity with regards to a footprint is where there was a typo, for example, and everyone sees that there's a 0 too much in a certain number, and you can just see from the rest of the footprint that it was unintentional. You can just change the 0 to nothing, and nothing. The footprint still holds up. A major nonconformity with regards to the footprint is where you really cannot substantiate the methodology that you used. So how did you get to this number? And if you cannot explain that, then the footprint itself doesn't hold up. So that's a major nonconformity. Usually with major nonconformities, they have to be solved sooner than minor nonconformities. Sometimes even minor nonconformities can be discussed during the audit in the year, in the second year. If the second reviewer also agrees with the positive certification decision from the auditor, you will receive a positive certification decision and you will receive 2 documents. It's the certificate and the report. And the audit report really summarizes everything that has happened during the audit, gives also a summary of all the evidence that you have sent in and all the most important observations from the auditor and sometimes the second reviewer. What is important to know is that we currently give out certificates or the assurance protocol allows certification bodies to give out certificates with the validity of a year, and there should not be any gaps in between the certification cycles. As I've said, we really recommend you to start scheduling your next audit 6 months after your first positive certification decision. And there are two possibilities for an extension. The first 3-month extension you can issue only if an audit date has been scheduled. So if you are running out of the year time, you can only ask for 3-month extension if your audit date has been scheduled. And the second 3 months extension can only happen if the audit already took place within those first 15 months. And so you have 18 months to get recertified. And if you don't get recertified, then there's no exception to that, no justifiable delay that you can communicate to us and we can agree on, then unfortunately decertification will follow. Now I would like to say something about the trademark and claim. Maybe is there a question first? No, I don't think so. Okay. The final document, trademark and claim policy, is also the smallest document that we have. It's nice and compact. It helps you. It helps you with the communications that you're allowed to make once you. Yeah. Oh, I think it was Mark. I continue. Ellen, you still see the presentation, right?
Yes, go on.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Yes, as Ellen already mentioned at the beginning, this is the logo, the trademark. It is formally registered. And here you can see some general rules. You can always use the logo, but only if you're product certified, you can use it on a pack. And only if you're service certified, you can use it on service. You can only start using the logo once you are positively certified. And but you can always already check, of course, if your communication is good, if your design for your product is well before, by just sending it to our communication department. And we would really advise you to use one of the 2 logos in the bottom of this slide, because we think it really explains a lot better what the program is about. Yeah, there's an increased international regulation also on the European level relating to offsetting and to claiming, to data transparency. So we really try to keep all these debates, or try to follow these debates and try to translate it to our program So also if you, for example, have a packaging or a piece of text approved for your website or for your product or whatever, please always feel free to follow up 6 months later, 12 months later, even though the packaging has not changed, but please feel free to check with us if it still meets the state of the art knowledge on claiming, because it's changing day to day. We're discussing this within Climate Neutral Group every day. So yeah, I really advise you to stay into close contact with our communication department. And of course, if changes do occur that really change the core of our program, then we will communicate it to you. Here are some slides that show you how we would like the logo to be mentioned. But what I think is more relevant for you is that if you would like to use a trademark, the logo in your text or on your pack, please 3 weeks prior to your audit already contact our colleagues or me, Communication Climate Neutral Group, and we usually respond quite fast, and we will give you a tentative approval. For example, if your since your packaging has not been printed yet. You can already start printing packaging material or brochures or anything other, but if we have not formally approved it yet, then it's really at your own risk. And you can bring the label approval or a tentative label approval. It's usually in the form of PDF or an email. You can bring that through your audit and show it to the auditor. And they will process this as evidence. All the clients that are certified under our program can be found on our website. This is actually an ISEAL requirement. So you can search for the client and check the validity of their certificate. Almost at the end, but what I would like to highlight, and this is especially relevant for companies that would that opt for a product certification, is that the certificate owner is not always what we call the end user. So for example, if you are a private label for coffee, but you sell your certified product to an end user, let's say a supermarket, then it's quite important that also the end user really follows all the requirements from the trademarks and claims policy. So we require that the end user also signs a license agreement with C&G, in which we really we make them also abide by the rules of our trademarks and claim agreement. The end user can also be in contact with our communications department to agree on labels or packaging or whatever. Just make sure that the certificate owner is in the CC, and then we know that everyone is up to date on that. Program fee is only charged from the moment that you have a positive certification decision. So for example, if you are an organization and you are certified from November, then you only have to pay part of your footprint from November until December 31st, and not the beginning, because you could not make claims then. So we also don't allow you to pay for that. With regards to products, it's really also relates to how many products you sell. And there's a STAFL in, I don't know the English word, but there's a different, the audit fees are mentioned in the assurance protocol. I think I have said this. This is a nice slide in case you don't have a carbon advisor yet. And the carbon advisors are the colleagues within Climate Neutral Group that are the account managers, and they are specialized in different sectors. And here's an overview of their names and their contact details. You can contact them in case you want to become certified or want to get technical support, footprinting or the reduction. And what I would like to show you now is briefly our certification website that has many. There we go. I would like to show you the certification website of our program, and it's climateneutralcertification.com. And I always use this website quite a bit because I always make sure that, or I always know that this website has the latest versions of all the documents. So on top, you have the core program documents, the standard, assurance protocol, and the trademarks and claims. The assurance protocol and the trademark and claims have been updated since the launch. So here you will also make sure that you have the latest version. And here are the links to the annexes. Annexes 2 and 3 have been updated recently. And what we also made are, or Ellen has written very many different guidance documents. We try to make them as short as possible. But for example, this is a really useful one on the quality management system and the climate policy. So it really tries to explain very briefly what do we require from you, what do we actually mean with the quality management system, and this really helps you to prepare for the audit. We have 2 different templates, one for the climate policy that you are required to write. In the second year, you are required to put it on your website. But if you don't want to do develop one from scratch, you can find a template here. And really useful is the reduction plan template, either for an organization or for a product service. Our colleague Giacomo is now working on a new version, and we will inform you of that once it's ready. Yeah, some final documents. Here the webinars will be mentioned. These are the ones from last year, but we will update them once today's webinar is over. So I would really advise you to have a look at this page. I think it's very useful, and yeah, if you also miss any guidance documents or you require any other information, then yeah, please contact your carbon advisor, and maybe it's something we haven't thought of. And let me double check slides. This was everything. Yeah, I have 4 more slides that are called the road to compliance, which really summarize all the steps that you have to take from the initial idea that you want to become certified through the whole process. So you can use that as reference material. We will make sure that you receive the documents and the presentation. And that was it from my side. And I think we have some time for questions.
We've been answering a lot in the chat.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, about additionality. Okay.
So all questions have been
Okay.
answered, but maybe there's more questions that people want to raise.
Yeah.
And if not, then we will just share the presentation slides.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add with regards to the assurance protocol or trademark and claims?
No, I think we said a lot.
We said a
I
lot.
think it's overwhelming, actually.
It's overwhelming. Yeah.
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 So if people have questions, they can always drop us a line, but best would be to connect with a carbon advisor.
Yeah. I think so. Let it all sink in. And then maybe in a day or two start opening documents again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't land all in one day on one webinar.
I
Okay.
think there's no other questions, so thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.